This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University, and today I want to talk about how you're running out of time when it comes to sovereign Bitcoin usage. Today it's still fairly easy for people in developed countries to exchange their dirty fiat for Bitcoin. You just open up an account in an exchange or on an app, you add some fiat money, you buy Bitcoin, and then you withdraw it to a hardware wallet like a Cold Card or a Blockstream Jade and put it into what's called cold storage. But I don't think it's always going to be this easy, and we're going to talk about many of the telltale signs in this video. All of the central banks of the world, and especially the Fed, are going to need to print massive amounts of new money over the next few years in order to avoid government defaults on debt. The governments of the world also need dumb people, many of whom also happen to even be fiat millionaires or even fiat billionaires. They need dumb people to hold fiat money and government bonds while they inflate away the fiat currency. Someone has to hold this debt. One way to achieve this is to make it more difficult to exit the fiat system entirely, and this is why FDR confiscated all Americans' gold before he massively devalued the US dollar in 1934. We've talked about Executive Order 6102 many times, but I don't think a lot of people really realize what was going on, so I just wanted to read this briefly. Executive Order 6102 required all persons to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all but a small amount of gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates owned by them to the Fed in exchange for $20.67 per troy ounce. So the U.S. government basically bought all this gold from people. And then what did they do just 6 months later? The 1934 Gold Reserve Act subsequently changed the statutory gold content of the U.S. dollar from $20.60 per ounce to $35 an ounce. And here's a really important phrase, and this is from that Wikipedia article. While this might be seen to some as a move that increased the value of gold, what it actually did was merely devalued the U.S. dollar so that less gold was required to back the U.S. currency, and the Fed was free to print more paper money. This is exactly what the U.S. had to do back when it was on the gold standard. Now it's much, much more easy for them to print money, issue more government debt, use that printed money to buy the government debt with. And so this was the kind of the old-fashioned way of closing the exits and boiling the frogs. But it's going to be quite different for Bitcoin, as we are going to see. But make no mistake, I think we are being slowly boiled. Here's how the exits are starting to close in 2023. But first, before I discuss that, if you're finding this video helpful so far, I just ask you hit the subscribe button. That really helps out the channel. Hit the like button, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future topic, and share this video. So I'm going to share an email here with permission from a viewer who sent this to me on August 2023. Quote, and this is a quote from the email, "Not sure if you are aware, but from this month, the big four Australian banks, I'm Australian, have announced that we can only transfer $10,000 of our money per month." I don't know if that's 10,000 US dollars or 10,000 Australian dollars, $10,000 per month to crypto exchanges. Ostensibly, this is to quote unquote protect us from fraud, but of course we know the real reason is that they must be worried about the massive outflows that may soon be coming to Bitcoin. What is your take on this? Perhaps you could do a video on it. I think that's exactly what they're concerned about, these massive outflows. We're seeing this a little bit in the US as well. This was discussed and argued about, but it appears that Coinbase was limiting Bitcoin withdrawals to $5,000 per week. It's not clear whether they do this to everyone. Coinbase denied it in certain places and didn't deny it in certain places. But this is something that if they're not doing now, they certainly could start doing. And it looks like in this case, they did sort of institute a throttle on withdrawals, even though this money was ACH settled already. So that is quite concerning if it's true. We're seeing this in a really more extreme manner in the UK. Not Your Bitcoin. UK crypto firms will now be forced to seize some inbound payments. Now, how do you seize Bitcoin? Well, you can't really seize it if it's not being sent to you, but this is an example where someone is sending Bitcoin to a UK crypto exchange and thus giving up sovereign control of it, because then the exchange controls the address that it's in. And in this case, they can refuse to pass it on to the customer. That's what this is talking about. Brits who receive money in digital wallets on crypto exchanges may now have their funds seized if they can't provide evidence about the sender's identity and the purpose of the payment following the introduction of new rules by the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. We're seeing this on a CoinJar.com article, support article about the travel rule. And the travel rule, it says from September 1st, 2023, new regulations referred to as the travel rule have taken effect. They've been designed to strengthen the security and integrity of cryptocurrency transactions. Yeah, right. That's exactly what it's doing, while combating money laundering and terrorism financing. Terrorists do not use Bitcoin to finance things. There was that retraction by the Wall Street Journal saying they used hundreds of millions of dollars when it turned out to be a very small amount, $10,000 or $20,000. So this is not the real reason. The real reason is, of course, to control the citizens. The travel rule is a recommendation from FATFA, of course, to increase transparency and accountability within the crypto industry. The implementation of the travel rule in the UK requires all cryptocurrency transfers in the UK to be accompanied by information about the sender and the recipient. This is extremely difficult or impossible to enforce when it comes to peer-to-peer transactions. But what this touches on is when you're sending Bitcoin or receiving Bitcoin from an exchange or a regulated entity or a corporation or something like this. How does the travel rule impact you, and what information will you need to provide? When you send or receive cryptocurrency, you will now be asked to provide the following details: whether the transfer is to yourself or someone else, information about the recipient or sender, including their name and in some cases their address, details about the recipient's or sender's wallet provider. For example, whether the wallet is provided by a cryptocurrency exchange or not. I believe that the UK travel rule actually makes perfect sense, because it's really sad to say the people of the UK simply cannot be trusted anymore. By contrast, UK politicians and regulators, they've always had the most spotless reputations, and I think we would all do well to emulate their moral uprightness and conform to the regulations. There's a long history of these people doing what's best for the country, and there definitely have never been any scandals of any sort. Here's another hint. I personally believe that you should never send Bitcoin to a UK resident's crypto exchange wallet. This is just a personal belief of mine. This is not financial or legal advice. Also, I personally think, and this is a privately held personal religious belief, that you should send it directly to the person's own self-custodial wallet that they control the keys to. Again, this is not legal advice or investment advice or any kind of tax advice or any kind of advice. It's just my personal religious belief that you should never send it directly to an exchange in the UK, but you should send it directly to a fresh address that someone has generated on their hardware wallet or on their otherwise self-custodial wallet that they control the keys to. If you send Bitcoin to someone at a UK Bitcoin exchange or regulated app or corporation or bank or something like this, you're relying on that company, on that exchange, on that corporation to make sure that the Bitcoin then makes it to the individual and is credited to the individual's account. And the exchange may simply refuse to do this until you both have coughed up endless personal information. And if they don't like your politics, they may just decide to freeze and suspend your Bitcoin and keep it for themselves forever, or at least keep it for a very, very long time. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so be sure to seek legal advice and obey all laws everywhere and at all times. And remember, your elected representatives and regulators, as I said, are doing everything they can to protect you. You should not listen to Ben Franklin, that idiot who said, "They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." I'm sure Franklin had no idea what he was talking about. Now, Bitcoin will probably never be outright banned in the US, the UK, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And authorities will be really happy to allow you to own a Bitcoin IOU like the coming BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF, since you'll be helping to build up a huge Bitcoin honeypot, BTC honeypot at Coinbase, which is going to be BlackRock's custodian. And the problem is that Bitcoin honeypot at Coinbase could someday be seized by the U.S. government in a 6102 type situation like we just talked about with the gold seizures of 1933 and 1934. Now, I think this is at least 5 years out. This is much more difficult to do in the U.S. given our constitutional protections, but those protections are rapidly being eroded. And it's certain that the Supreme Court, Congress, executive branch, no one stood up for the American people when FDR decided to steal their gold in 1933. So ultimately, the U.S. Constitution is a shitcoin and does not protect you. What we need is cryptographic protection and security, which is what Bitcoin gives us when we hold it in a self-sovereign manner. So if you buy the BlackRock ETF, there's a chance that all that Bitcoin that's building up at Coinbase could someday be seized by the U.S. government. By the way, that would not be something that would hurt your wealth. That would actually make the self-custody Bitcoin that you own, that's not on Coinbase, that's not a BlackRock paper Bitcoin either. It would make that true Bitcoin that you're holding even more valuable and not less. What's the conclusion to all of this? If you want to be able to own and self-custody real BTC, the time to act is now. The time to act is now. The exits, as we said, are slowly being closed. These withdrawal amounts are going down. It seems like every year the amount that you're allowed to withdraw and the speed of Bitcoin withdrawals. Now, there are always going to be non-KYC methods of obtaining Bitcoin, like the ones that I teach in my paid course. You can also sell your goods and services directly for Bitcoin and have them send it to a wallet or an address that you control. But these methods are a lot more work, and it can be difficult to buy larger amounts of Bitcoin using them, especially the non-KYC methods that I talk about in my course. Here's what could happen to you if you are still selling enough to have your coins on an exchange or in a custodial wallet, your Bitcoin, or in a custodial app where you don't hold the private keys. So let's imagine the year is 2025. One Bitcoin is worth $500,000, and you happen to own one Bitcoin, so has purchasing power of $500,000 in today's dollars. You're holding it at Coinbase because you have been too lazy to pull it out. And now what happens? Suddenly the weekly withdrawal limit from Coinbase gets dropped down from $5,000 per week to $100 worth of Bitcoin per week. And if this were to happen, you'd probably die before you'd be able to withdraw that $500,000 to self-custody. It would take a really, really long time. And I think that's the whole point. The problem is you'll still be rich. You'll still be able to send your Bitcoin IOU easily from Coinbase to Fidelity to JP Morgan to Bank of America, etc. on this sort of privilege network. But it could be extremely difficult or impossible to ever withdraw it again to a hardware wallet or to a self-custodian wallet. Self-custody wallet. And when that happens, your Bitcoin is no longer freedom money for you. If it's trapped on Coinbase and it's trapped in the US banking system, you can't take it with you to a more friendly jurisdiction if things go south. You can't cross a border with it in a brain wallet. You cannot send it to the local farmer to buy that newly forbidden evil food called grass-fed beef if you have to ask permission from Goldman Sachs or from Coinbase or from JP Morgan to move your Bitcoin. When you hold it in a self-sovereign manner and you control the private keys, you can sign a transaction and send it to any individual anywhere without needing permission. You might get rich holding the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, but you will never get free. So now is the time. Today is the time to buy BTC. Take it into self-custody on a hardware wallet or into multi-sig and really learn how to use these tools. Once the Bitcoin's there, you'll never again have to worry about getting rugged by FTX or Celsius or Coinbase or any other custodian. Once the Bitcoin is under your control, you can send it to anyone in the world at any time without needing to ask anyone's permission. And that's really what sovereign Bitcoin usage is at its best. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.